Greetings and welcome to Conversations with Craig. I'm Craig DeRoche, the CEO of the Family Policy Alliance. And just as a reminder, we want our audience to be interactive here. So we want you to share, we want you to like, we want you to post, we want you to ask questions too, because both myself and our guests can see those questions and we'll be able to work them in the show. So please participate while you're here with us. Well, folks, I'm talking to you in a very big week for our nation as we saw family policy issues become front and center in major elections in Virginia and New Jersey. But that wasn't all that happened this week. On Monday, the U.S. Supreme Court heard oral arguments on a Texas heartbeat law that is aimed at and so far has been protecting the lives of the unborn. Now, we've talked about this law before, and we've even had our special guest, Jonathan Saenz, who's the president and executive director of Texas Values, with us. And he's going to join us and give us an update here. There's a lot at stake, and we know that our audience is very interested in the outcome of where this is. So I'm grateful to, before we bring him on, I'm going to introduce him a little bit and remind the audience that Jonathan is a lawyer who's worked on family policy issues for 2 decades, and including several years at First Liberty Institute. Brings a wealth of knowledge to these issues, one of the smartest lawyers out there, and he's at the cutting edge of all this work, and he leads this amazing organization called Texas Values. If you haven't heard about Texas Values, go and check them out. Like Texas does, they lead our country with so many innovations, and protecting the lives of the unborn is no exception to that. Jonathan, we've talked about the heartbeat law before, but in case anyone missed that conversation, let's start with what the law does, then we'll jump into what the Supreme Court's up to.
Absolutely. Craig, well, good afternoon and good morning, depending on what time zone people are in that are watching. I'm sure you've got a great audience around the country and maybe around the world with some of the wonderful work that you and your team at Family Policy Alliance are doing. The Texas heartbeat law is very simple. If a baby's heartbeat is detected, that life is protected. And the issue here too is when it comes to enforcement, there's also a different mechanism that's used. The Texas heartbeat law empowers private citizens to go into court and hold abortionists accountable if they perform an abortion on a baby where the heartbeat is detected. And the law requires the abortionist to check for a detectable heartbeat. And, look, and we know that when it comes to issues like this, when it comes to pro-life legislation and pro-life law, it's important for them to go into effect so we can start having the benefits of them. And typically the benefit of a pro-life law going into effect is babies' lives are saved. And Texas heartbeat law is different than other heartbeat laws in other states. Those laws have been challenged, never went into effect because they use a mechanism that we often see where the government enforces the law. But that allows the pro-abortion side to go into court before the law goes into effect. It's called a pre-enforcement challenge. It's a way to strike the law down and to say that there's a constitutional right that's being infringed upon by the government. Well, the Texas heartbeat law does not have the government involved in enforcing it. And so if the government is not enforcing a law against you that someone claims is a violation of their constitutional right, you no longer have that constitutional claim, and it takes away your ability to stop a law before it ever goes into effect. As a result of that, what we've seen is the Texas heartbeat law has been in effect since September 1, and we estimate that over 9,000 lives have been saved since then. We're talking about over 60 days. And as a result of that, we estimate there's about 150 lives that typically abortions that would be performed on a daily basis, close to 50,000 in the state of Texas annually. But abortion entities are telling us and reporting publicly that they're not performing abortions because they don't want this law enforced against them. And so that's a tremendous win for life. And we've got more information at texasheartbeatlaw.com.
And we're going to share that link with our viewers, and we do hope that you'll check it out. And this is complex, but I think that was a wonderful explanation of this. And so now we know that this is an innovative law, that Texas innovates on a lot of things. Kind of if you see something, say something. It allows the of, for, and by the people, for the people to participate in trying to save the baby's life. It's attracted, though, a lot of detractors. It's attracted a lot of people trying to stop this law from going into effect. It's had varied success through the court system. It has not just one, but two different challenges that have risen lightning fast. I think, I'm not a lawyer, but lightning fast for a September 1 effective date to the Supreme Court hearing oral arguments. But before we get into the oral arguments, I want to know who is behind the challenges and why they're challenging this law. And it's okay, Jonathan, to talk about both of them at the same time, both challenges.
Sure. No, absolutely. So there are two main court cases, and there have been several court cases. As a matter of fact, the Texas heartbeat law has been looked at by the U.S. Supreme Court already. On the day it went into effect, the September 1st, things moved very quickly on that day. There was litigation that was filed by abortion entities long before the Department of Justice got involved. And so this is the second trip to the U.S. Supreme Court for the Texas heartbeat law. So whether it's been in federal court, state court, or at the U.S. Supreme Court, the Texas heartbeat law has prevailed through all of these challenges, and that's been a good thing. And so, but there are two main cases. One is a group of abortion entities and abortion doctors that are really suing private citizens. They're trying to bring them into this litigation. I believe they're trying to intimidate them. They've also done that against a judge. They want to really strike fear in people that simply, as you said, if you see something, you say something, right? If you saw a baby in the back seat of a car in a Texas summer, where who knows how far over 100 temperatures can get inside a vehicle. If you saw a baby in there, you would say something. You may even decide to take action, but you would report it, and you would want to make sure that that life is saved. Very similar concept here. And there's been case law about private causes of action for enforcing federal and state laws. That's nothing new. There's a lot of examples out there. The other cases brought by the Department of Justice and the Biden administration, they're trying desperately. They've sued our attorney general. Really, they've sued the state of Texas, but our attorney general and other government officials into this litigation. Well, the statute, the state law, the Texas heartbeat law has made it very clear that government officials have no role in enforcing this law. And so, but here you have the Biden administration trying to pull them in because that's usually the way things are done for the pro-abortion side. And so those are the main parties and the pieces of litigation that have been moving and had some action and found themselves before the U.S. Supreme Court on Monday.
And so it was Monday, and to timestamp the video, that was November 1st, 2021. There were oral arguments before the U.S. Supreme Court. And for the listeners out there, the U.S. Supreme Court functions differently than other governments. If they want input, if they want oral arguments, that's their choice. They don't have to do that. They don't do it in every case. It's not like a normal court where you have one person up there and things are polite. People get to finish their sentences. You have 9 people all at once. They're free to speak whenever they want. They can interrupt both the plaintiff, defendant, this side, that side. So it can be a little bit chaotic, but it's a wonderful tradition for those of us that have seen and checked in on that. And people try to read the tea leaves. They try to speculate because sometimes a justice will go all the way down a trail of almost playing devil's advocate for something that they agree with. And sometimes it's the opposite. So for our audience and for the listeners and with your training, you've actually been a leading constitutional scholar with a lot of these things. People look to you, Jonathan, and your years of experience in law and in advocacy and in public policy. Give the listeners a little read in here. You're the commentator. What happened on Monday?
Well, and look, the case by the abortion entities that are trying to sue against private individuals and also against a judge and probably everybody involved in the state judiciary in the state of Texas, these are bullying attempts. These are attempts to scare people that simply want to apply the law and want to move forward and hold abortion doctors accountable. And so really the time is not now for them to be in litigation because there haven't been any court cases yet against them that we're involved in from people in the state of Texas. So no one has actually has yet to enforce the law. And so really the argument is that the abortion entities, they've got to wait until someone comes forward to enforce the law in court before they can get into court. They're trying to do that ahead of time. They're trying to skip some steps. The Department of Justice issue is really about what I talked about forcing the Attorney General's office and other government officials to be involved in this litigation when the statute says clearly they have nothing to do with it. And so, we heard some robust arguments. They went till after 12:30. I don't remember, almost to 1 o'clock But a lot of good questions, a lot of good interest. And my read on this is you're getting into some really old school case law. You're getting into a lot of procedural and technicality issues. There's a lot of discussion about court cases from the 1700s. And so really looking at some principled areas. And it's not anything new for there to be private causes of action, right? There's a False Claims Act. There's Medicaid fraud claims that people can, when there's Medicaid fraud, people can bring claims. Private citizens can bring claims to enforce statutes, state and federal law. And so it's nothing new what we're trying to do with this mechanism here in the Texas heartbeat law, even though maybe you haven't seen it in a pro-life law before. And so my read on this is because of the technical level of the discussion and the questions, the courts want to make sure that they're right on principle and they're looking at case law and it's all backed up together. But my hope is, and my belief is, that means the substance of the Texas heartbeat law, which really wasn't in play in discussion on Monday, is in a good position to continue to prevail and to continue to stay in effect. And I think they're going to look at something procedural. Maybe they'll try to find a way to limit how these things are done in court, but I don't think it's going to result in the Texas heartbeat law being, not being able to be enforced or being struck down as unconstitutional. I mean, look, we're now, we're dating this or whatever. We're 3 days after the U.S. Supreme Court hearing. If there was such a need, if there was something that was such of an emergency nature, if this, in fact, as the other side states, was such a violation of some constitutional right, why has the court not done something? This is the second time they've had a look at it. And so I do think the expedited nature of it, they may make a decision very soon, but I don't think it's going to be as a result of anything that harms overall the Texas heartbeat law and prevents us from going into effect. And a lot of that, Craig, is because you've got over 300 pregnancy care centers and centers like them across the state of Texas. They're providing the needs every day for women that I think instinctively move forward with their baby and the baby being born in something that is just important to them and of value. And they're seeing that they've got that love and support around them all across the state of Texas.
Well, no doubt this is having a positive effect on young women, that are carrying a baby in their womb that have a lot of fear, and people are telling them the right thing to do is maybe to forego that baby's life, and they're talking to those centers. So I really appreciate you updating people, because folks are talking about a return to some barbaric age and all the rest of it. It's wonderful that our audience knows that people are reaching out to try to provide services to these young women that are obviously in very difficult personal situations if they're considering an abortion at all. So that is very helpful. And so one of the things that, a lot of people are looking at these things as they read. Not most Americans are not lawyers. They're not steeped in constitutional law or the traditions of the Supreme Court. They're wondering, is this going to have any effect on the Dobbs case? And before you jump in here, I want our audience to know, when I say the Dobbs case, what I mean by that is it's a Mississippi case related more directly to Roe versus Wade and the constitutionality. If there, the people that read the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, there is no mention of abortion. They're saying the Dobbs case might be a more direct review by the Supreme Court of Roe v. Wade in total. This law is more, if Roe v. Wade still allowed abortion to be legal, a legal way in which it could be restricted. Am I reading that right? And do you think the two are related, or do you think they're completely separate in the eyes of the court?
Well, there's no question they're separate cases. Now, both of them do come from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is a collection of 3 states, Mississippi, Texas, and Louisiana, that are part of a federal court of appeals. And so, decisions that are made by the Fifth Circuit out of Mississippi can also be precedent for federal courts in Texas as well. And so there's definitely a lot of talk about the two cases, but, the difference, there's a difference substantively too in the Mississippi case, because you have a line that's drawn in that case about abortions performed after 15 weeks. And so that's different than the Texas heartbeat law, even though the Texas heartbeat law doesn't get into a specific date. People sort of are assuming, or you can gather somewhere around 5 or 6 weeks could be as early as a heartbeat could be detected. But also there's been, a lot more review in robust briefing and so on from the Dobbs case. I mean, really what you had was the Texas heartbeat law went up and it was expedited, it was fast tracked, because you're really at a procedural point. You're really at an entry point when it comes to whether or not those cases are going to move forward at all. And whereas the Dobbs case, I think, is you could consider more of an issue where you've got a classic challenge before the U.S. Supreme Court about the constitutionality of a particular law. And so, but there'll be a lot of discussion about the two, but they are different in significant ways, and particularly how long they've been working their way through the court. The Texas heartbeat law has been in effect since September 1st for over 2 months, right? And so I think it's fair for us to look at the climate in the state of Texas during those 2 months and ask ourselves how things are going. And I think it's fair to say that the people of Texas, the pregnancy centers, are providing the needs. There's no reason to have this concern that, you're going to have such a big change in the society and culture. That's being embraced and being handled and responded to well. And so, and look, whether or not the U.S. Supreme Court, the justices are going to talk about the heartbeat law or look at some of that. I mean, certainly there's some case law and courts cases that are going to be discussed that are discussed in the briefing on both cases. But I don't know that the decision of one is dependent on the other. And so I do think they're going to look at, and you have to appreciate this, okay? And I've worked on U.S. Supreme Court cases. I was an attorney for Gianna Jessen, who was a late-term abortion survivor many years ago. And, you can imagine I was reflecting on that when I was at the Supreme Court on Monday. I was there when we were there trying to protect a health and safety law from the state of Texas as it relates to abortion facilities. That was a case that went up to the U.S. Supreme Court. I was in the courtroom for the arguments on that case. And so typically the Supreme Court is going to look for the smallest, kind of tightest window that they can go through to make a decision. And you would hope leave that to, the will of the people and the will of the states and the legislatures after that. And so I don't think that's any different when it relates to the Dobbs case or the heartbeat law. And so what we're looking for is just that the heartbeat law continues to stay in effect. But I do think as it relates to the Dobbs case, whether or not you're going to hear a lot more discussion about Roe versus Wade, I didn't hear that discussion on Monday. I think you're going to hear more of that as it relates to the Dobbs case. And that's December 1st. We were there on November 1st. Our team will be on there December 1st. I do predict one difference is you're going to see a much bigger crowd on December 1st, even though we had a lot of our friends there on November 1st, a lot of national groups that support the Texas heartbeat law. I know Family Policy Alliance has definitely been one of those supporters. But because of the buildup and the time that the Dobbs case has been around, people have been sort of planning for that. And I think some people think there might be a little bit more at stake on December 1st and how that goes. And definitely Texas Values will be there and be a part of it.
So you commented on Texans, both privately and professionally, rallying to the cause of young pregnant women that are concerned about their own ability to raise a child. That's good news. What effect has this had on abortion in Texas? While this, as you said, has actually been in effect, it is not. None of these court cases, other than for 24 hours or 12 hours here or there, have taken it out. It's essentially been in effect now for 2 months. What effect has it had on the actual practice of abortion in Texas?
Well, one of the things that's been interesting that's being reported is that abortion entities themselves are deciding not to perform the abortions because of the nature of the heartbeat law going into effect, the fact that private citizens at any moment could go into court and hold them accountable for that. So it's really doing what it's supposed to do, which is protecting babies with a detectable heartbeat. And that means lives are being saved. And so I do think it's interesting that the abortion entities themselves have publicly stated that we're not going to perform abortions. Now, there was a very small window, 12, 18, 24 hours, whatever it was, where you had a trial court, a federal trial court, rule against the heartbeat law, and not completely, but just say that certain people could not go into court, and judges and so on couldn't hear it. It could have also been brought in federal court. My point is, it was a very brief amount of time, and there was, I think, I just saw one reported abortion entity said that they were going to get back to performing abortions. Well, the next day or the next day or two after that, the appellate court overruled that, which allowed the heartbeat law to continue to go into effect. And so, and that's, the way we see it is, that means lives are being saved, or lives are being preserved. And I had a reporter ask me, sort of the same question over and over, and I kept giving the same answer. And I think they, thought there was something else that I wasn't telling them. But essentially, they were asking me, what's this all about? What is it that y'all are really trying to do with these type of efforts? And it's very simple. We're trying to save lives. I mean, that's it. It is that simple. And so, but as a result of those lives being saved, I do think there are a lot of women that are realizing, what, there's a lot of support if I want to give birth to my baby that I didn't realize existed. And now that you've got a law in place, and it's not so easy just to run to whatever abortion facility that I think is misleading people at times. They're looking at what all of their options before I think many of them think they only had one option. Now they realize there are other options. And, one of those options is life.
Well, amen to that, Jonathan. And I look at things kind of 180 degrees different than the popular culture does a lot of times. And that's what you've just said, too. People look at abortion as a problem, when in fact it's not. For the person considering it, it's a solution and to their problem, which their problem is likely fear. And if they're afforded better solutions, and if they're made aware that that those are available, they can make a better decision, or a different decision for sure, than aborting the life of someone who might contribute mightily to our culture over their 70, 80, or God willing more years in Texas as a Texan. So God bless you in this work. We had a question for you from Ashley, one of the viewers out there. She just wanted to know, again, these are complicated issues. It doesn't sound like this is the end, even maybe with the Supreme Court for the Texas heartbeat law. They may do a procedural ruling and wait till it actually gets challenged, the actual practice in courts. That hasn't occurred. So what's the takeaway from today? That for those listening, that they should know, and that they should be participating in. What can they do to help?
Well, first of all, continue to be in prayer for this effort, for this case, for the Supreme Court justices. These are, some of the most important issues that go up before the U.S. Supreme Court. And I don't think they get any bigger than issues that are literally about life and death. And so please continue to pray. We've got a great event coming up this Saturday, November 6th, in the Houston area, whenever people get to watch this, where we're going to have the author of the heartbeat law, Senator Brian Hughes is going to be there. And people can find out about that at our website, txvalues.org. Pray for Senator Brian Hughes. He has done so many interviews. So has Texas House Representative, the House author of the heartbeat law, Shelby Slauson. We were all up there together in D.C. This Monday when the U.S. Supreme Court was hearing these cases. And so to continue to pray for those lawmakers and our attorney general and their team. But check out our website, texasheartbeatlaw.com. Share that information. We're going to continue to update it with resources, but also analysis of what's going on within the law itself, so people can have a better understanding of that. So great opportunity to have these conversations with people. I'll tell you, Craig, one of the things that I think has been a very important aspect of this effort is the issue of the heartbeat. The heartbeat is a universal indicator of life. It's something that is so simple that people understand. And I think it's allowed people to say, well, wait a minute. If the heartbeat is beating, if a baby has a beating heartbeat inside the womb, I didn't realize that. And maybe this isn't something we should do. I think it has been transformational in a lot of ways, and it's just a scientific fact. And so I think the more that people realize this is a great time to have these conversations with people that maybe you haven't had about before, in a loving way, in a considerate way, and sometimes a sensitive way, depending on, you never know what's happened in people's backgrounds and in their lives. But there is no doubt this is one of the most important issues that's going on in our society and our culture, and obviously before the U.S. Supreme Court.
And I agree with you. And thank you for talking about Texas values. And for our listeners, we've shared the link in the comments. We would ask you to click on that. I'm going to ask you a little bit more about Texas values. But before I do that, I want to talk from my perspective about what Texas values is. We have the privilege at Family Policy Alliance of working with 40 state organizations, Texas Values being one of them. And we strongly believe at the Family Policy Alliance, in the rich tradition of the founding of this country, that the states should be sovereign. That is where the policies closer to home should be put into place. The federal government's primary role when it comes to, say, monetary policy or foreign policy, that's where the states came together and said, we're going to defer to you on that. But when it comes to state policy, and you know, to be better, it should be local policy. And we have these wonderful organizations like the Texas Values that we want you to check out. To give you an idea of what they do, and I'm going to ask Jonathan to explain a little bit more about what they're up to at Texas Values besides this. But we have a wonderful organization in Virginia called the Family Foundation, and they got involved with the Loudoun County School Board. They took the side of the parents. And did they make a difference? I'll let you judge for yourself. I think they made a huge difference by getting involved to have an organization that is proud to stand up for their values as parents and as families. As I started this show saying, family policy is a thing, just like tax policy. And for organizations that won't back down to the bullies. And in New Jersey, we had the Family Policy Alliance in New Jersey doing the same thing, coming up slightly short, maybe, in a statewide election, but changing the entire narrative, empowering families. It had nothing to do with partisanship. It attracted Republicans, it attracted independents, it attracted people that voted for President Biden and Democrats in Congress. So, Jonathan, tell us about Texas Values, that tradition that you follow alongside your peers, and a little bit more about the organization besides the Texas Heartbeat bill.
Well, thank you, Craig. And I'm a fifth generation Texan. So, God knew what he was doing when he gave me an opportunity to lead a state-based group. And so not only do I care about the issues we work on, but, I'm invested in our state. My family's been here for quite a long time, but we work on the issues of religious freedom, pro-life, and marriage and family. And we do those in the arenas of the courts, the legislature, and the media. We are a state-based nonprofit Christian organization, and we're 2 blocks from our state capital. So anything's happened at the state level and also at the local level, school board issues and others, we get involved in those. From A to Z, from helping decide what is the strategy for particular legislation, what should we be working on, what should be working against. So issues like the heartbeat law, how do we get that through the legislative process? So really from A to Z, right? Looking at the language, figuring out who would be the right person to carry the legislation, and then teaming up with other groups at the state level and the national level. Family Policy Alliance was a great support and partner on the heartbeat law and other issues as well. And so we helped get those through the legislative process, but sometimes we have to go to court. There's a few court cases. The studio I'm in, we've got a weekly radio show. We understand the value and necessity to continue to communicate with people, but also at a professional level. We've got supporters of our organization in all 254 counties of the state. And just real quick, you can see behind me a little bit more of Texas, okay? This is that come and take it message that you hear a lot in the state of Texas. That's the Bible in there. And we've got a graphic too with a heart, because, this is sort of what is the mindset at times that if you're going to come in the state of Texas and mess with our babies, be ready to have, a response or resistance. But, it's important for people to get involved. And a big part of what we do is to try to empower people to connect with their state legislators, connect with their state senators, and sometimes at the congressional level. I think we had over 100,000 messages go through our action center to elected officials just this year in the state of Texas. And that was one reason why, even though we're there every day of the legislative session, we got to have that support. But together, we were able to get things done like the Texas Heartbeat Law.
Well, I'll tell you what, and it's amazing. And for our audience, I'm from Michigan. Everything's bigger in Texas. 254 counties and
a lot of people.
The work you're doing and just the sheer size and scope of the challenge of doing this, and 100,000 messages this year to state legislators. That is stunning. So we're going to wrap this up here, but I'm going to wrap it up with a, I think there's some encouragement out there. There's people from all over the country. We have Nevada, Massachusetts. I'm trying to look, Colorado. We got people all over listening to you. what's going on, out there? Is it, when you say you're sending 100,000 messages, is the audience growing? Are people getting more involved or less involved? Do you have reason to be encouraged, or should you be discouraged right now?
No, absolutely. I mean, there's momentum too. And just as a reminder, okay, two things. Number one, I was born 9 months after Roe versus Wade in 1973. There are a lot of people like me and others. We've all got our personal stories and connections. Number two, Roe versus Wade was decided in the state of Texas. When it comes to the issue of life, Texans that care about this issue, have a lot of reasons to be motivated to want to do something special and meaningful and historic. And I think that's what we're doing with the Texas Heartbeat Law. Number three, the last thing I want to say is no matter where you are, if you're in the state of Texas, another state, another country, if you've done anything that relates to the life issue, you have been a part of us being in a position to have a law like the Texas Heartbeat Law. You can rightfully claim that you had some hand in us being at this point and having this place in society where people understand this issue enough for there to be supportive of it. And this was a bipartisan effort. It wasn't just Republicans. Last thing I want to say, because of that, let's stay united. There are a lot of personalities and different ideas people have when it comes to the life issue. And I know so many of them and all of them are well-meaning, but sometimes, we can we can be going in different directions. This is a key moment. Let's all stand together. Let's stay united. And I'm so grateful that there's so many organizations that continue to demonstrate that unity and that excitement and that energy that helps us continue that momentum and continues to build such a strong pro-life society and culture in our state, across the country, and throughout the United States of America.
And what a great way to wrap the show. And thank you for those thoughts of encouragement. I want you to know, as we sign off, that your voice is being heard around the world, because our friend Jackie just chimed in from Ontario with blessings for the work you're doing. So let's stay together. Let's see what we can do at Texas and the U.S. Supreme Court. But let's keep building on what we have. Thanks for being on the show today, Jonathan.
Thank you.
It's a real blessing.
God bless. Appreciate it.